with you, if that's okay. Sure. And then I've got this this technology which is going to allow folks in the audience to perhaps ask some questions, and then we could bring those to you. And I would have to say that your presence here this morning, I think, is probably highly anticipated, because there's a lot of folks here in the audience that are really interested in the Defence Investment Agency, very interested in having this capability, or having a capability that doesn't quite match what the government of Canada has asked for. We've got the issues of legal risk, procurement risk, we've got financial risk, we've got political risk, and we can look at some procurements here. And I think that what's been I think not a positive aspect of what we've done in the past is we haven't always placed the operational risk or the risk of having the capabilities at the top of that risk calculation. It's actually sometimes been down lower, where it wasn't even really a consideration. It was all about these other aspects of risk. So risk tolerance and actually risk acceptance in this time of some urgency seems to be where we want to really kind of change the culture around defence procurement. Can you talk to a little bit about that at your level, at the political level, but also within the federal bureaucracy that's dealing with this, and within the Canadian Armed Forces, about our risk acceptance and risk tolerance?
Yeah, I would say I would couch our risk tolerance as to have migrated into the paralysis by analysis bucket, where no one wanted to take the risk. And by the time I got to someone who owned the risk, the problem had grown so big that either the timeline or the cost was out of control. And then trust me when I tell you, no politician wants to go out there and say the project that we said would take 3 years is now in its 9th year, and the cost is, depending on who you ask, is tripled at minimum, and probably more than that. So it's about risk management, not risk avoidance, not risk anything. And anybody in this room who's been in a uniform or is wearing one, that's what they do. They manage risk. So we're moving from a risk avoidance. I think that's a fair criticism. I think that's the system was just paralyzed by making a mistake, and in the process of being so paralyzed that they probably made more mistakes than they would have had they just owned the problem up front and got on with their lives. But that's where we are. So I'm going to manage risk, and I'm not afraid of risk. I'm going to take risk where I need to, because I have to deliver. I have to deliver for the forces. I have to deliver for the government. I have to deliver for. And oh, by the way, we haven't even talked about the taxpayer, and that's rarely brought up here. But I got a responsibility to deliver things and respect the taxpayer, because too many of these big projects end up in the dirt, and that's not a good place to be. Shortening that timeline will help alleviate that, being really honest about the costs up front. There's a whole host of things that need to happen, but on the risk side, yeah, we're going to take some risks. And where it's the scariest of all these risks is it's a political risk, because it doesn't matter. If you're a CEO of a company, and I used to be one, at the end of the year, I look at my balance sheet. I had 8 things that turned out great. I had 3 things that didn't turn out so good, and probably wish I didn't do them, but I did them anyways. But as long as my balance sheet at the end of the year looks good, as a CEO of a company, I'm good to go. It doesn't work that way in politics. You can build 1,000 bridges, and you know the rest of the story on that. But this is the job. So we're going to take some risks. We're going to manage some risks, and we're going to get the job done quickly. And I'm sure there's going to be some mistakes. This is a big thing, and we're going to have to manage those as we go.
All right. Well, I think that that certainly is satisfying in terms of what we would want to accomplish. I would know that everybody who's still working today on all these issues hasn't quite seen that we're there yet. So, I think this is going to be perhaps one of the biggest areas.
This is part of my problem. This is part of my challenge.
Right. It should be keeping you up at night, I'm sure. I have one last little theme I want to talk to, but I'll just encourage everybody, if you haven't yet, we do have the Slido. Take the opportunity to put in a couple of questions here, and I'd be very happy to bring those to the Secretary of State. Build, partner, buy. So that's kind of the bumper sticker in terms of the Defence Industrial Strategy, and I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think all of the objectives that are kind of laid out in the Defence Industrial Strategy resonate, and I think everybody's kind of happy to see it. We're still missing some big parts of the picture, still waiting on a national security strategy, wondering whether or not things that we've already said is still extant in terms of a changing geostrategic environment, continental defense, and what all that means with our partners in the United States. We had the U.S. ambassador to NATO yesterday, some really interesting conversations about defense procurement and industry and safe in Europe and buying American. And so all of that, I think, is a separate topic. We'd need another 4 hours with you to explore all that. But I guess on the build, partner, buy, the Canadian Forces, and I think if the Chief of Force Development were here, would have the long laundry list of the needs of the Canadian Armed Forces. Some today pressing, urgent, there are gaps, and others that are kind of just need to be brought into the inventory because we don't have those capabilities, and some of them are going to take time to bring into service. So who's going to do the triage of, look at all of that, and we're going to say we're going to buy that because no one in the short term can actually deliver that. Who's going to partner with to deliver that set of capabilities, and which ones are we going to build in Canada? I know we've got the sovereign capability areas. So I guess the first question is how do you triage all of that demand that we've got on the requirements side into this build, partner, buy? Good luck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we wait for the traditional way we do things, like there's an order of operation that things happen, and we're just going to get stuck in the same cycle. We're building out a process, but we have to. We're driving the car and changing the tire at the same time. So we will come up as we stand alone. The agency stands alone. We rewire it. There'll be a less chaotic way of doing things, but the bottom line is that. The Defense Department needs to start pushing projects. They're the ones that know where the need is. I'm not the expert there. The element chiefs know what they need, and they need to start pushing projects, bringing projects forward that may have been identified in our Strong and Free, maybe in a long string, but guess what? That string was put in there based on the money that we had and the projections we had at the time. That entire landscape's changed. Do we sit around and wait for another defense policy update or another defense policy? We could do that. What are we doing in the meantime? Probably nothing. So this is just communication with the Defense Department, trying to figure out what they need to do and start bringing projects forward. Even though there might not be that bucket of money, there's a big bucket. It hasn't been parsed out into little buckets. Start bringing projects forward. I'll let them decide what those buckets are. That's what they do. And I'll give you a good example. Submarines, again, I'll keep going back to that. There's no money identified for submarines right now. We are well into this process. You walked in, how many sub signs did you see? Like, we're going to do this. We are doing this. It's not, we are actually doing it. And if you look at the traditional model and go, okay, where are all these things that have to line up to enable this to happen? Guess what? They're not there yet. But there is a commitment. We've got a budget. We've got a policy document, and there's a massive will. So in the seam period, where we're at right now, we're going to be doing things, we're going to be taking risk, right? So some folks are going to be out over their skis. That's not a comfortable place to be all the time. It's the worst place you can be if you're in the political landscape, because a lot of the arguments you end up having aren't even sensical, but that's the space that I operate in. And as far as the Defense Department getting out over their skis, they will have policy cover just from conversations with the government of Canada. We talk. The Defense Department and the Government of Canada talks all the time. Bring us your projects. Advance your projects with your internal resources as far down the road as you can go, and we will pick those up and run down the field that we'll go to Treasury. Oh, on the Treasury Board thing, this is exciting. It's a process thing, but those of you who know, one of the biggest problems we have with this entire thing is Treasury Board. If you get a project going down the road and you're in contracting, typically Treasury Board's not going to give you all the money up front. They're going to cut it up in a million chunks. So if you have I'll just make this part up. If you have a $10 billion project, you might be going back there every $1 billion. You'll have project milestones. You have to hit those. You're not giving you any more money until you meet your milestone and the thing's on path. It takes forever. Constitute Treasury Board. Get on the agenda. It gets bumped. You're stuck. Nothing's happening. It is a terrible place to be stuck. The hamster wheel of unhappiness. This is what this is called. During COVID, because of the situation that we found ourselves in, PSPC came up with a risk-based approach to contracting. And essentially, we're going to continue, and they built that out since then. So anything right now, anything under medium risk, yeah, you need project authority, spend authority, contracting authority. But if it's medium risk or under, and you go through this RBA up front, you don't have to keep going back to Treasury Board every single time. You'll get spending authority, and as long as you stay in the lane, you're not going back there every single time. Again, there's risk, and guess what the cap is for me? It's unlimited. There is no cap. That's never happened before. It's no cap. So under medium risk, once it's gone through all the processes and now we're delivering on the contract, it's going to take a couple of years, not 10, 2, 3, 4 maybe. As long as we stay in our lane and we don't blow it, we just keep going. We don't have to go back to Treasury Board a million times. And again, there's a lot of risk everywhere with that, but this is managed risk. So on the process side, this is unbelievable. If you were used to be a VCDS, well, I'm sure you.
Well, in fact, we started that thinking when I was the vice chief as a part of the defense procurement strategy at the time, and we also had that same kind of thinking about how we would move forward here. But Treasury Board always reserved the right to call forward projects despite what was established in the risk profile. So the fact that we're maybe going to sort of discipline ourselves here to hold you to account. Like in the end, I think it is a question of accountability for delivery.
Right.
And, yeah.
So all these authority gates, how do we manage this before? We just put up authority gate. That's what we did. How do we manage risk? We just put in a million authority gates, and hopefully the screw up got caught in one of those gates and we fixed it before it blew up into a massive problem. Well, guess what? We need to remove, if we want to go fast, we have to reduce, not all of them, but we have to take some of those authority gates out. There's a great example of taking an authority gate out, but now you have a single point of accountability. It's very difficult when you have those three departments, everyone's kind of going like this. Everyone cares, and I want to say this too. I don't want this. The legacy system we had, it worked. You could argue it was slow. It certainly won't meet the moment going forward. But everybody that I've run into in the bureaucracy wants to do the right thing and get things done. No one's sitting there dragging their feet because it's an intentional, I don't want something to happen. Everybody wants to be successful. Everybody in the bureaucracy wants to stand at a dock or at an airport and see a really awesome piece of kit roll in and go, hey, we were a part of that. We got it done. And we met the budget. We got it done on time. They all want to do that. And we're going to enable them to be able to do that. Everyone's ready to go. PSPC has been unbelievable. And I know that the D&D space, I know from being in it, PSPC, I've been involved with PSPC for 8 months. There is a step change in how things are being done. And there's going to be some exciting announcements happening here real soon to add to my list of demonstrating to the skeptics that we're moving with at speed and with intention. And I think that we're on a good path. I think this is good.
I think that that point is we do have people, good people, right through the system, but they're all working in an imperfect system, or a system was never designed that wasn't designed for the speed that we need to go at.
No, we'd be in a constant state of urgent operational requirement, given the volume of things and the timeline, and we can do that, but we couldn't sustain that. So this is why this new way of doing things with the Defence Industrial Strategy and the DIA has been put into place.
Coming to our last couple of minutes that we got with the minister, everybody who's from defence industry here, can you just put up your hand for a second, working in the defence industry? So we haven't really talked very much about how defence industry, what's new about how to engage defence industry as partners, because like in the end, that they'll be the ones either building it, we're going to either be buying it from them, or we're going to be partnering with them. So as a part of this new approach, what's new for how to work with industry, and how do they participate from your perspective?
Well, I used to be in this space, so I understand the language, and I understand it certainly from an SME perspective. I understand the barriers, and it was so bad from an SME perspective, I just stayed out of it. I could go after 10 commercial opportunities, get 6, or I could go after 1 RFP and get nothing and waste a bunch of time trying to figure out how to do it. So I just stayed away from it. In this defense and security space in Canada, there's about 600 companies. 93% of them are SMEs, and they make up 40% of the workforce. So we can't ignore these companies. We need to bring them into the tent. They have different problems on getting into the tent than the OEMs. The OEMs have all the resources, the lobbyists, they understand how the system works. So I think from an OEM perspective, just better comms with the government. And I've already started, that's all I do really, is I do industry engagement. I pretty much know way more than I did before, certainly in areas that I didn't. Aerospace I knew, that's my background, but ships, AI, artificial intelligence, weapon systems, land systems, I know a lot more about that. So we're just engaging with industry way more. SMEs had a bunch of other challenges. Capital, that was a big barrier. There's a whole bunch of new streams to capital, and they have been beefed up. BDC got $4 billion.
In fact, we have the BDC right here.
I see her sitting right there.
I think we have other interested parties in the
NRC got a good chunk of money. The regional development agencies got money, so there's a bunch more capital. Security clearances for SMEs have been a nightmare. You get stuck in this void. That will never be mine, but I work in PSPC, and I'll make sure that they're spun up to do that. Secure spaces, because we can't have these conversations at Starbucks. Those need to be resolved.
Well, or Mar-Largo.
Or the bathroom at Mar-a-Lago. And you know, a new one that's not identified in the list is export permits. One thing we haven't been very good at, whether it be an OEM or SME, is helping us export. There's like Macron, I'll use him as an example all the time. You can't, this guy is like a machine. He's the president of France, but yet he is selling stuff for France all the time. Like, we need to support either be OEM or SME outside our own borders. As part of our targets is to increase our defense exports by 50%. We're beefing up people at embassies in Europe and the UK. Defense attachés that are getting renewed marching orders to help support this. So comms with industry is where it starts, and bringing these people into, and these agencies and companies into the tent is important. And then I would say finally, with regard to SME or OEMs, like the big ones in Canada that we have, I mean, the government can't force them to do anything, but you know, if we're going to buy Canadian, in some places, like the shipyards is a great example. We are essentially buying ships from Canada, whether it be warships or icebreakers. This is just happening. So, you know, when I go to a defense shipbuilding OEM or an aerospace one, I'm going, hey, listen, you guys review your supply chain. Make sure your supply chain is bringing in as many SMEs, Canadian ones, as you can. This is the story. And make sure it's not just in your home province. Like, build yourself out across the country. I also have a responsibility to make sure that this money, this investment, is sprawled out as best it can be, not to slow the process down or to favor anybody over anybody else, to make sure that it's amortized across the country so everyone will benefit. Canadians will not support defense spending of this magnitude in the long run if they don't see something other than a ship in the harbor or a plane on the ramp. They need to see, hey, listen, my uncle works at, you know, he was building cars in Southern Ontario and now he's building armored vehicles. They need to see some return on this massive investment other than just the things that I care about, all these things, but the people in this room care about defense procurement, either they're as operators and or in the business, but we're only going to spend at this pace and at this magnitude if Canadians support it. I think they will support it, but they need to see it in other ways that we would appreciate it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, we have 8 minutes left. I just want to maybe turn to a couple of miscellaneous questions. This one from the audience, and it talks about intellectual property. So how, within our go-forward approach here, we're going to kind of prioritize in our evaluation of procurements and prioritize Canadian-owned IP going forward? And I don't know if you have a response to that, but
no, I can address it.
Curious if you've got an answer.
So under the strategy, build, partner, buy, obviously, and what hasn't come up today, but comes up a lot, is the definition of a Canadian company. And I want to make sure, I even made this mistake early on, like in the first couple months. Canadian company, we're buying from Canadian companies. We want Canadian economic development is what we want. So our foreign direct investment is up at a high watermark we haven't seen in a long time. So we want foreign companies to continue to invest in Canada. Bell Helicopters builds helicopters in Canada. I think they have 4 lines of helicopters. They employ hundreds and hundreds of people. Airbus, L3, we all know who these companies are. We want them to not only continue to deliver things for us, we want them to grow. RTX is another one. We want these companies to grow, so we're not going to penalize them, but we don't want to be vendor locked either moving forward. So when we get into the ITB VP, value proposition, we want to make sure that we talk about IP in a way that gives us the ability to manage whatever we buy on our own terms in the long run. We may get the OEM to help bring us the new thing into service because they're the brain trust on the thing. But maybe we want to compete it after it's brought into service and have a Canadian company, and or that this OEM brings it into service, they're going to invest more in Canada. But there's ways that we can quantify that to encourage either the company we're buying from that's not a Canadian company, say, they have a footprint here and they have hundreds of jobs, to continue to invest in Canada and to make sure Canada has access to the IP they need moving forward if that company packs up and leaves or decides they don't want to do business with us anymore. So IP is important, and we will make sure that we have access to the IP we need in perpetuity while we have the weapon system that we buy.
Perfect, thank you. We had recent kind of conversations in the national press, and I guess I want to maybe take us this last part of the conversation about continental defense and our relationship with the United States when it comes to defense procurement. We have the defense procurement privilege that we've got through the DPSA, the sharing arrangement that's been in place for many decades. We've worked very closely with the United States, and I guess as we kind of go forward from here, and we know that part of Canada's approach here is to be less reliant on the United States in general, be more autonomous, be more independent, diversify our networks, but fundamentally, our military mission, of course, is sovereignty, continental security with the United States, and then, of course, primarily our alliance commitments through NATO for international peace and security. So that big middle piece demands, I think, us working in very close conjunction with the United States for all of our capabilities that work for continental defense purposes, and principally, of course, through the NORAD, the NORAD framework. So, just wondering, as we kind of move forward here, what does that relationship look like? Is it changing from your perspective in terms of the fundamentals, but the need for us to continue to work really closely from an interoperability, from an integrated perspective, from an interchangeability perspective of the capabilities that we need to ensure that we're working in close cooperation with the United States in continental defense, including integrated air and missile defense, for example, in the future?
Yeah, I think that's important. It's number two, continental defense is number two, or NORAD. Again, sovereignty, NORAD, NATO, operations other than war, those are the kind of the priorities. The United States is still a very important partner of Canada. That's not changed. We need to be more resilient and less reliant. That message is very clear. And we will work with the Americans where we can, and we'll go our own way where we have to. With regard to NORAD, we bought a tanker. We didn't buy a KC-46. We bought an A330. It's French. Over the horizon Arctic radar. That's not from the U.S., that's from Australia. So, we will work with the United States, but I think that we have the ability to do both these things, and we will where we can. Sometimes we will just walk down the traditional path, and other times we'll walk a different path. This is just the reality that we're in. And that doesn't mean it diminishes the relationship or the partnership or the mission. It does none of those things. And I would argue that we're already doing it with the two examples I just gave you. That's where we're at.
All right. Well, Minister, we're coming to kind of our final couple of minutes, and I'd like to just give you, I guess, the opportunity to come back to maybe if you're leaving this audience with a couple of key asks. Because I think back to what I said earlier, like if we're waiting for government to figure out everything and do everything, this is a kind of an all hands on deck. We've got to find the right way to get everybody involved in helping build Canada's strength here. And so what is it that you would ask of this audience to help you in your mission?
Well, it depends from what perspective you come, because everyone, industry will have a different need, or I'll have a different ask of industry. I'll have a different ask from the military. I would say start pushing your projects forward. Figure out what you need and start bringing projects forward, even though it may not be a traditional way of waiting for a signal to do stuff. This is just the moment that we're at right now. Bring your project forward and let's get cooking here and get these things done. Industry, let's continue a dialogue. I've got a remit in the DIS to set up a defense advisory forum, which I plan to do. We need to work closely with industry and bring them into the tent. Building out a resilient supply chain, much more autonomous than it's been in the past, is a priority for the government. Again, it's super clear this has to happen, but that starts with dialogue. I feel like the dialogue is already greatly improved. It needs to be better. We need to send, and the DIS does this. If you look in the DIS, there's strategic capabilities. So I would say to industry, if you want to see where the puck's going, I would look down that list of strategic capability. We've declared those things sovereign, which is an indicator that if you're investing or thinking generally of where to skate, that's probably where you want to skate, and then we can have a conversation about more specifics, and we will do that to make sure industry is fully engaged moving forward. I'll tell you this, I just got back from South Korea, and I didn't know this. I knew France has a pretty independent supply chain. Almost everything they have is indigenous. All the parts, they have no ITARs a Rafale, as one example, if they do everything themselves. Turkey has done that. South Korea is almost done doing that. So we're not suggesting this is the direction we're going to go. That's a pretty big, from where we are now to doing that. I don't see us doing that, but from where we are to that extreme, those are the bookends. We're going to land somewhere in the middle, and it's all about build, partner, buy. And the government is super serious about this, but we need everyone to help do this. We can, I mean, if you look back to what we did in the war, like our machine was virtually non-existent in 1938. By the end of the Second World War, we had built 16,000 airplanes, 880,000 land vehicles, 4,000 ships of various capacities, billions of rounds of ammo, and millions of rounds of artillery shells with 11 million people. So to say that we can't step up a little bit and meet our own needs and work with our partners, whether it be the US or anybody else, in a time like this, where, like, take a look at the paper. Like, this literally is an upside down world that we're living in. We can do it because we've done it. We just need to do it again. And it will take everybody here to come together to make that happen.
Well, Minister, I think that's a perfect way to end off. You know, I've talked about cynics and critics, and as I said to a number of folks yesterday, this is a time for us to be really positive and optimistic, especially in this community, because it's been issues that we've recognized are so desperately needed. And it's great to have your enthusiasm. It's great to have somebody like you in a job that nobody else really wanted to have. So, I mean...
You're welcome.
I guess that's an endorsement. Thank you for taking that on, and thank you for being with us here this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right. And there you have it. Don't forget to leave your comments and your thoughts. Like, follow, and subscribe. Thanks for joining us here this morning.